الله العلي العظيم صلوات الله محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد بكربلاء، السلام عليك يا أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي يا أبا الفضل العباس وأختك زينب وبنتك رقية وشهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات الله محمد وآل محمد. My condolences to the human race on this very momentous night, which is really a night that is unimaginable in terms of its status and its quality. And it's a testament to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed us on this earth to be tested. You know, we live on this earth for a very short period of time, and we must be willing to sacrifice. As Allah in the Quran says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You will not achieve righteousness until you give with that which you love most. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You will not achieve righteousness until you give that which you love most. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us most when we give ourselves to Him. You know, when we say قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Our prayers, our sacrifice, our life, our death is all for the Almighty. Why? Allah owns the universe. Why should we give anything to Him? Only when you and I recognize how merciful He is and how consistently He keeps giving us and how He cares for us and how He is destined for us to enter paradise. Mankind has not been created for hell. Mankind has been created for paradise. What you and I tend to talk about, unfortunately, as a human race, is how do we avoid hell? And that's important, very important, because we recognize that our foolishness and our ignorance will lead us there. It's like a student who's reckless and careless, who doesn't study, who doesn't care about their future. They end up being marginalized in society. They end up losing out on all the hope and all the potentials in this world. So there's that fear, I don't want to fail. But you will notice a good student doesn't think that way only. A good student thinks, how can I achieve a perfect score? How can I be the best student? They are worried about the average of 95 to 100, you know. They're concerned about that 1% elite. That's the iman and the ibadah you and I need to indulge in. These commemorations and the remembrance of Ahlul Bayt is at this level. That while the world is under the rahmah of Allah, and while the world is generically good, the world is holistically good. The human race is not evil. There's a small percentage of evildoers who, as we call them, vocal minorities, who push societies to commit these crimes that are taking place in the world today. But the majority of the human race is good, regardless of what faith or culture or nationality they belong to. But you will notice that our objective, while that is all good, is for you and I to look at the rahmah and the potential God has put within us and to say, how can I maximize that? Allah in the Quran says, Ya ayyuhal insan, innaka kadihun ila rabbika kadhan famulaqi. O mankind, keep struggling upon struggle till you meet your Lord. This struggle, you and I think, is to avoid hell. It's a secondary matter because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has endowed us sufficiently that paradise is a gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But shame on us if we enter the lower paradise when we could have attained proximity to the prophets and Ahlul Bayt. Shame on us if we could achieve the highest standards when we aim for the lower standards. Shame on us. When you're super intelligent and you don't use your mind to do good things, then shame on us. If you're strong and you don't do things to build good things, if you are wise and you don't use it to promote, positive trajectories in societies, shame on us. Tonight when we remember and we commemorate and we cry, why do we cry for Imam Hussain? Because his sacrifice was the ultimate in perfection. He gave more than any of us on earth can imagine to give. With no compunctions, without any fear. No fear whatsoever. And if he had more children, he would give more of them. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala. It's fine. Sensitive. So tonight when we remember the sacrifices, I want us to remember that what is the element, you and I, to be in their footsteps. While we cry and we feel the pain, may Allah increase it as we say, Azzam Allah ujurana ujurakum. May Allah reward us and you for this feeling of sadness for this treacherous event, because it shows that there's khushu, there's connection. It's like, imagine, I give you an analogy. This is real. What we're talking about is real. And believe me, there is nothing more powerful than the real stuff. But if you watched a Hollywood movie that was fictitious, though it may have happened in history, but that movie is not necessarily depicting a real story, but there is an orphan being abused and killed, then you and I should cry. Because it's the essence of the event that brings the hearts to cry. You see? When we cry, when there's injustice, it's a connection to God that, my Lord, I'm alive, and I understand your mission, and I am your servant, and I feel the pain, not only through sympathy, but empathy potentially, that if there is any kind of injustice taking place in the world, then I am there to stop it. Tonight, when we will shed tears for Imam Hussain, as you know, tonight is the night of Ashura, the 10th night of Muharram. It's called Ashura because it comes from the word 10. And we know historically that Imam Hussain was taken to Karbala because Muawiyah, Abu Sufyan, Yazid wanted to eradicate the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now you might think, why is that so important? He says, well, we as a human race, Allah guarantees, by the way, He guarantees His religion will be kept intact. He guarantees it. That's why He chooses agents. But those agents are willful individuals. They're not robots. Our prophets in Ahlul Bayt are willful humans just like you and me. They feel the pain. So tonight when you see a father crying for his son having received an arrow in his neck, it's a father. No father can stay without shedding that tear. It's very, very sad when you look deep into it. But I want us to understand the machinery of how this worked, so that our tears are not just shed without meaning. It must translate to action, transaction. And Allah says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Indeed, Allah does not change the affairs of a community until the community changes themselves first. And Allah shows us examples on how to change. That in the annals of history, the sacrifice of Imam Hussain A.S. is enough of a reason for you and I on Judgment Day to have no complaints. To say, oh Allah, it was very difficult, we couldn't do it, we didn't have any examples. This is why this event is so important. This is why our children need to get educated. Raise our children educated. There's this young boy, Ali Asghar, who recites here, Qasim Ali, beautiful reciter, recites Quran, dua. Raise them this way. Make them role models. Educated children, educated, talk to them, raise them. This is the mission of Imam Hussain A.S. That when we cry, when he takes his infant, it's precisely for this. He says, I'm leaving you a great example that don't ever fall behind. Be on the front lines and be the finest in the world. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. But the machinery of the Umayyads, I want to share a little bit. As you know, in 3 years, Yazid came into power. In 3 years, he desecrated and attacked the most iconic symbols in the religion of God. The representative of Allah is the first year he killed Imam Hussain and his family. Second year, under the command of Muslim ibn Aqaba, desecrated the Prophet's mosque. There were dogs and monkeys. Can you imagine? You ask any Muslim in the world, what? Dogs? Monkeys? Who? Foreigners came? No, no. The very people who claim to be with the Prophet. Unbelievable. I want us to just think that. When we talk to people, say, if I told you, you know, there's a story, I'll share it. There was an ambassador from Rome. Ambassador from Rome. And he was standing at the court of Yazid. And Yazid took a stick and he's hitting the head of Imam Hussain. And this ambassador looks, he said, who is that head? He says, that's the grandson of the Prophet. He was infuriated. He said, what? He said, we Christians have a footprint of a donkey that Jesus rode on. We hold it with honor and sanctity. You take the head of the grandson of the Prophet and you behead it and you hit it? Shame on you. That even the Christians of that time recognized this dhulm. I want us to understand how evil Yazid was. He says, oh, how I have avenged my forefathers in Badr, in what I have done. This is the kind of a person, we as a Muslim ummah, even the non-Muslim ummah, should recognize that evil pervades through this system. And then people get validity to become tyrants in the world through such people. So tonight we cry for freedom, we cry for humanity, for justice, and for honor and dignity towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We must not allow it. And that's why you notice Yazid, the first year, he kills Imam Hussain. Shame on him. Second, he desecrates the Prophet's mosque. Third, under Hassan bin Namir, he burns the Kaaba. I mean, you could not find, as I mentioned the other day, you cannot find a worse human being in history who committed this. So now how does the Imam stop this monster from stepping? It starts, Mas'udi, who is a famous scholar who is not from the school of thought of the Ja'fari, says Mutarraf ibn Mughira was a friend of Muawiyah. And Mutarraf goes to visit Muawiyah, famous story. And he says to Muawiyah, now that you got what you wanted, meaning the caliphate, why don't you let loose on the Banu Hashim, the family of the Prophet? Why don't you let loose, let go your animosity against the lovers of Ahlul Bayt, let go. You know what Muawiyah replies? Incredible reply. It's an ode to history. He says the first Khalifa, Abu Bakr, was a companion of the Prophet. And he died, no one talks about him. He says the second Khalifa, companion of the Prophet, he died, no one talks about him. Third Khalifa, companion of the Prophet, he died, no one talks about them. Meaning the people of that time did not talk about them. He said, but this brother of Hashim called Ahmed, everybody talks about him. He's even got his name in the adhan. I am going to make sure I wipe it out. This is what Muawiyah said. He said, I will work hard to wipe this out. So imagine the Imam is looking at this. 10 years Imam is dealing between Muawiyah and Yazid, and he's watching. Imam Hassan is watching. He says, this voracious monster who wants to come and eradicate the religion of God, how do we get into the belly of this animal and destroy it from inside? Because it has to be, this is a cancer that must be stopped.
Muhammad Ali Muhammad salawat. Please move forward. Please kindly move forward so others can come in, please. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allah bless you, brothers. Thank you. Thank you, brothers. May Allah bless you. May Allah bless the whole world that feels the pain of Hussain ibn Ali tonight, that has gathered in different places in the world just to remember this great event. Now, we are emotional. Not to be emotional, wallahi, it's only because I have not found anyone who cares for us more in the annals of history to have placed his whole family to save you and me and to save humanity. That's why. May Allah bless those people who get together while they're busy. They give up their time just to come and listen and pay attention. You find historically, as we mentioned, Muawiyah tried his best. And the Imam now has to go on the front lines. Historically, it was very fascinating. People say Imam Hussain A.S. wanted to, take the caliphate. He wanted to become a leader. He was already chosen by Allah. If he wanted to fight Yazid the way people accuse him to be, then why did he take his family and children? No one goes to war with your infant baby. You understand? You don't go to battle with your infant baby. You leave them at home. But the Imam knew this fateful day requires the entire age range, requires every culture, nationality to be present. And these women and their children who Imam took from the house of the Holy Prophet and the companions' wives and children will become the media that will tell the rest of the world how evil the forces of Iblis are and how Imam Hussain rose as a lesson for humanity. That's why he took the women, because they became the media. Historians say Rabab, the mother of Abdullah, Ali al-Asghar, as they call him Abdullah Radi, and the mother of Ruqayya, the little 4-year-old girl who died in Sham. She was one of the wives of Imam Hussain A.S. She was present in Karbala. She witnessed. You know how powerful her media was? She refused to go back to Medina. She stayed in Karbala. She stayed in Karbala. She pitched a tent where Imam Hussain was massacred. And she just sat there waiting for caravans to pass by, and she would wave at them and call them and says, come, let me tell you what just happened. She remained in that same place until she died. She never went back to Medina. That was the media she had, that she refused to go back. Al-Baneen, the mother of Abbas, you know what she used to do? You know what she used to do? She was an intrepid woman. 4 sons she gave. She says, Al-Baneen, 4 sons. She says, God, if you gave me more, I would have sent them all. Abbas alayhi salam had his son left over in Medina. She used to take him to Jannatul Baqi. Whenever I go visit Jannatul Baqi, I first go to her. And I stand on her grave. I said, oh, Fatima Al-Baneen, you are my role model. She was so strong, she took the sons of Abbas and she would stand there and invite the people of Medina. Then she would tell the whole story of what happened in Karbala. This was Al-Baneen, the mother of Abbas. Women were so vocal, and of course there was no more vocal a woman than Zainab alayhi salam. Zainab was so vocal that after Imam Hussain A.S.'s head was severed and they were entering Kufa, people were beating themselves and crying. Zainab looks at them and says, shame on you. When my brother called you, you didn't reply. Now you are crying. When my brother called you, you did not rise. You were coy. He called you Hal min Nasirin Yansuruna, but you people did not rise. Zainab was vocal. She stands in front of Ibn Ziyad, she is vocal. But what's all of this about? The core, what gives them this strength? Their love for Allah. They love Allah so much, and I will tell you, when you love someone, the word love and the word sacrifice are inseparable. If you claim to love someone, you must be willing to sacrifice. And if you sacrifice, it means you love them. These two words are inseparable. You can never claim to love someone without the willingness to sacrifice. That's why we bear allegiance, that Imam Hussain A.S. loved Allah. He loved him so much that in the annals of history and sacrifice, his love was supreme to Allah. This is why we gather here, brothers. We want to love Allah too. We want to be masters of love of God. We want to submit and give our souls to Allah. But how do we do it if we do not repeat these stories? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And that sacrifice, ya Allah, every time I think about it, is very difficult. But how do they do it? They had long-term vision. Long-term vision. They knew why Allah created them. And they knew their function in this world. And to them, the day of judgment was like happening in front of them. It's very, very important. You see anywhere in the Quran, you will notice their conversation, the chosen people of God, always brought the day of judgment into the conversation. For example, Allah said, وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. As you know, Fatima al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Fatima al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha, made a vow with Allah. يُوفُونَ بِالنَّذْرِ وَيَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا كَانَ شَرُّهُ مُسْتَطِيرًا. She made another. Imam Hussain and Imam Hussain were not well. She said, I will fast for 3 days. As she's about ready to break her fast, and yatiman wa asiran, right? So miskinan, a poor man walks up, knocks on the door, and they're about to break their fast, she gives the food away. وَيَطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ. They give food for his love. They care for orphans, they care for the poor. They care for the wayfarers. You know how many refugees we have in the world today? You know how many orphans we have today in the world as we speak? Millions, millions of orphans, millions of wayfarers around the world. So many lost. Allah gives an example. Look what humanity needs to do, and not to create orphans, and not to create wayfarers, and not to create refugees, and not to create poverty. You find she gives that food. Next day, she's ready to break her fast. Orphan shows up. Yatima. Again, she gives food and they break their fast with water and basic means. Allah is watching. He says, look at this agent of mine. Look. So, you find that she gives, and then the third time, there was a wayfarer, a traveler, lost. Again, she gives food. And Allah reveals this verse in the Quran in Surah Al-Dahr. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. What do they reply? He said, لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا إِنَّا نَخَافُ مِنْ رَبِّنَا يَوْمًا عَبُوسًا قَمْطَرِيرًا. Amazing. If you examine what they're saying, she says, we want no reward from you. Meaning that when she gave this food, you say, what should we give you for this great deed? She said, لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. We want no reward nor thanks. We are afraid of that day when God will hold everybody liable. What does she mean? She says, Allah loves us too much. He's given us too much. Shame on us if we don't sacrifice. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Just take a coin and tighten this. No, the coin. We need a coin and tighten this. Just a coin. It's about sacrifice. But notice, when does sacrifice come into play? When you and I have a long-term vision. Long-term meaning, day of judgment. We know why we were created, and Allah is watching what we do. Inna Allaha basirun bima ta'amalun. God sees what you do, and therefore when you do good, you see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, why did you do so good? Why did you not lie? Why did you not cheat? Why did you not harm? It's because it's all about that fateful day. Ya ayyuhan nasu ittaqu rabbakum wakhshaw yawman la yajzi walidun an waladi wala mawludun huwa jazin an walidihi shay'a inna wa'dallahi haqq. فلا تغرنكم الحياة الدنيا ولا يغرنكم بالله الغرور إن الله عنده علم الساعة وينزل الغيث ويعلم ما في الأرحام وما تدري نفس ماذا تكسب غدا وما تدري نفس بأي أرض تموت. Look at this verse, the last few verses of Surah Luqman. where God says, beware of that day. Ya ayyuhan nasu taqu. When father won't help the son, nor the son will help the father. You won't be able to recognize your father on that day. You will say, nafsi, nafsi. You'll be worried about yourself. And Allah says that is a promise. Not to put fear in us, but to make us upright, to make us good, to make us sacrificial, to make us progressive. So when we have that vision, very clear vision, when we talk that way, then our actions change. You know, Ibn Muljim was the killer of Imam Ali A.S. Ibn Muljim was a killer. When Ibn Muljim enters Kufa, Imam Ali A.S., he had a roster. Whoever would come into Kufa, he had a roster. They would register their name at the gate. Imam is reviewing the roster and he sees Ibn Muljim's name. He says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. From Allah we come and to Allah we return. The companion says, Amir al-Mu'mineen, why did you say that? He says, my qatil, my killer has just entered the city. Imam Ali a.s. knew who would kill him. This same Ibn Muljim, once Imam was with his companions, and Ibn Muljim comes, he says, Amir al-Mu'mineen, I want a horse. Give me a horse. Imam calls his companion, says, give him a roan. A roan was a spotted horse. He says, give him a horse. So Ibn Muljim rides it and he rides away. The companions say, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you told us that man will kill you. So why did you give him a horse? He says, so on Judgment Day, he has no excuse that I was not nice to him. Meaning I was nice to him even now. Even to the extent, to the last second when he struck me, I was nice to him. Even after he struck, they say, when Ibn Muljim was held, they tied his rope in his hands so tight. Imam says, loosen it, it's hurting him. You know, when milk was brought to him, Imam says, drink it. Ibn Muljim even could not hold himself. He says, this rahmah of this man that I've hit him, but he loves me too much. This is Islam. This is how Imam Hussain was. But ask Imam Ali alayhi salam, his conversation is that day, day of judgment. I'm working for that day. I have such clarity of that day that every move I make now is all about that day. The day when we will be held liable and God will ask us, ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ. On that day you will be asked, what did you do with my ni'mah? Did you use it correctly? Did you have khushu for me? This is why Fatima al-Zahra salamullahi alayha gives, and Allah says, look at them. Why do I honor them? Because they're only thinking of the day of judgment. لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا إننا نخاف من ربنا يوما عبوسا قمطريرا. We're afraid of that day because God has conferred too much grace on us, shame on us if we are not sacrificial in giving. This is the deen. Now Allah in the Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah 153, 154, 155. These are the verses I started today. Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabri was-salah. All you who believe, seek refuge with patience and prayer. Sabri was salah. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Indeed, Allah is with the patient ones. This is beautiful because when you understand this verse, Allah is advising us, how will you pass this test? This test is a difficult world. It's difficult to pass it with high grades, with high standards. It's difficult. You and I should struggle with each other, that I want to be in the highest station of paradise with the chosen agents of God. That's the only thing you and I should be thinking about. How do we get there? But when we think about that, please understand that no, the rahmah of Allah is already there. If you and I simply return the favor to Allah, Allah guarantees us, Inna alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat lahum jannatul na'im khalidina fiha wa'dallahi haqq. When you believe in do good, for you is paradise, God promises it. So you and I should struggle. But how? Allah says, how do you win this game? How do you win this trial? Patience. Sabri wa salah. Two of the greatest characteristics in Karbala. Sabr and salah. That Imam Hussain A.S. in the middle of the battle is looking up to see it's prayer time. Imam Ali A.S. was fighting in Siffin. They say he was in the middle of the battle. It was so heated that day. It was for hours they were fighting, for long periods. Imam in the middle of the battle, he looks up and a companion says, why are you looking up? He says, I'm seeing if the prayer time has come. He said, but we're fighting a tyrant. Our bodies are being dismembered. Imam looks at him and says, why are we here if not to maintain salah? That one wants to eradicate salah. That one wants to eradicate the Prophet. That one wants to eradicate remembrance of Allah. If we do not represent it even on a battlefield, then why are we here to fight? Historians say Imam Hussain A.S, half his army was killed when Imam was praying in Karbala. Half his army was showered with arrows. Imam didn't care. Because to him, salah is this representation of the connection with God, because it's a command of God. Aqim as-salah. Maintain prayer. This is the deen of Allah. You and I should be asking, why should we maintain this salah? If you and I love Ahlul Bayt, then we should say within our souls that I will never give this up, because that's the connection with God. They say every prophet before they left this world, 124,000 of them, it was known even among the Jews and the Christians that when a prophet of God leaves this world, the last word they utter is as-salah, as-salah, and then they die. It's amazing. And Imam Hussain A.S. shows that. So Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabri was-salah. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Allah is with the patient ones. There's a difference when you and I are with Allah. But when Allah is with the patient ones, it's a whole different conversation. Allah says, I love you so much because you are patient, that I am with you. I come and I am with you. I honor you. When Allah honors us, oh my God, that's the end of this. There is nothing greater to speak than when Allah honors us. Nothing greater. So Allah says, Inna Allah ma'as sabirin. Allah says, La taqulu liman yuqtalu fi sabilillah. Do not say those who die in the way of God are dead. Nay, they are alive, but you cannot see them. Imam Hussain A.S. is alive. All the shuhada Karbala are alive, but you can't see them. Lakin la tash'urun. Then God says, we will test you. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ. We will test you with fear, loss of life, loss of fruits. Allah says, we will test you. How? We live in a world where the minute you and I need to promote good, evil forces will come and stop us. Today, speak the truth and see how quickly we'll be silenced. You speak some intrinsic truth sometimes, people say, hey, this guy is too truthful. Silence him. When we represent goodness, we get silenced. We have difficult trial today in Birmingham, England. A young boy, a Sayyid child, 16 years old in Birmingham, standing outside commemorating the Shahada of Imam Hussain in Birmingham, UK. And a group of thugs who hate Ahlul Bayt, who hate Amir al-Mu'mineen, who foment hatred, who are part of that same group, of the ISIS group that goes around with guns and beheading people, came and slashed his neck, stabbed him in his body, stabbed him twice in his face, and the boy was just pronounced dead. How sad is that? That this hatred hasn't stopped for 14 centuries. And it continues to grow just because we say we love Amir al-Mu'mineen, just because we say we love Allah the way Allah wants us to love. How do we stop this? This hatred, this animosity, this venom that has spread and caused the lives of millions to be lost. How do we stop it? We stop it with patience, with kindness, with uprightness, and we diffuse animosity. A man comes to Imam Hussain A.S. salawat ala Muhammad. Imam was riding a horse, he stopped him. Imam, and he's vilifying, speaking bad to the Imam. Angry. But Imam Hussain looks at him, doesn't get angry. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ. The character of Imam Hussain A.S. was he only got angry for Allah, never for anything else. Never. Even then, when Allah was being belittled, when Allah was being lied about, then you'd see them, they would rise and they would do it surgically without any loss of temper. The man is vilifying Imam Hussain A.S. Imam descends from his horse, comes towards the man. Now, what would the typical human being do? Get into an altercation and start fighting. Because shaitan loves fuel. Add fuel to the fire. Imam looks at him and says, you look tired. You look exhausted. There is much tension in you. Come home, let's have lunch, relax, and then we can continue with this conversation. The man started to cry. He said, God knows where to put his leaders. Because Imam diffused it. There was a man who used to come and vilify Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. He used to say very bad things. The companions would sit and they would listen, and this man is like really throwing all kinds of slurs. Imam was silent. Companions said, Ya ibn Rasulillah, why is he like this? He said, he has a reason. I'll show you why. This is the hikmah of Imams. You and I can't have this hikmah. They have what we call Ruh al-Qudus. They can see secrets that Allah has given them because they're Imams. That's what makes them supreme. He said, watch. So he takes the companions, he goes to the man's house. The man had a farm, and his farm was rather deep inside the land. But you could see it was barren, not much vegetation. And Imam walks towards his house. The man comes out of the house, seeing the Imam is approaching him, but the Imam approaches him gently, not to cause any fear. And he comes in front of him, and the man comes and has a conversation with the Imam. And the Imam says, the man asks him, why are you here? He says, I've come to buy your land. I've come to buy your land. He said, how much do you want for it? The man gives him a number. Imam doubles it, and says, you want this? I double it. Here's the money. The man takes the money, puts a smile. He says, Allah knows where to put his Imams. Allah knows where to put his leaders. And the Imam turns to the companion. He says, he was angry with me because he was angry with Allah. His land was not producing much, so he saw me as the representative, so he was attacking me. Look how the Imam diffuses animosity with kindness. قَوْلٌ مَعْرُوفٌ وَمَغْفِرَةٌ خَيْرٌ مِّن صَدَقَةٍ يَتْبَعُهَا عَذَى. Kind speech and forgiveness is better than charity followed by injury. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So tonight, brothers, in the night of Ashura, there is much to say, much history, but I know we're here to get inspired. And I want to take this opportunity while the world is listening, that we are in a very critical time in society, where Islam is the #1 agenda. You turn on any television station on earth today, you will see the name Islam come somewhere. Unfortunately, in a negative way most of the time, but it doesn't matter. It's still an introduction to something that requires thought. And the growth of people becoming Muslims now is larger and greater than ever in history. So you and I are blessed to be the flag bearers, that while this world is eager to know about Islam, you and I should rise and take the opportunity to bring people closer to Allah. While the enemy wants to silence the deen of Allah the way Muawiyah wanted it, Imam Hussain A.S. says, I teach you how to reach the belly of the beast, and you're going to make them become believers. The way when the Mongols, you know, when the Mongols invaded Iraq, the Mongols were a voracious army, and they used to annihilate anyone who was in their way. You know, when they took over the Muslims, they became Muslims. Did you know that? The Mongols became Muslims in time because the love that Islam has shown to them by the common people was so powerful that while they were basically barbaric in their behavior, Islam tamed them and made them into good human beings. Now imagine Karbala, imagine Imam Hussein's hikmah with such precision when he walks, with such quality that he walks. This is what you and I need to look into and examine and say, I am one of those lovers of Ahlul Bayt. I want to stand in universities. I want to stand on pulpits. I want to write books. I want to write poetry. I want to go online. And I want to be a role model citizen who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing me so that I have a testament on Judgment Day that, Ya Imam, you gave your family, but it wasn't in vain. It wasn't in vain. You had mercy on us. And today, by the way, this media of Karbala is larger than all media put together. You look at, Murdoch's system, Rupert Murdoch's, and you look at the Foxes, which is part of his. You look at CNN, combine all of them in power on one side. You cannot compete with the media of Imam Hussain A.S. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It is penetrating, it's deep, but it means you and I need to be proactive people. Allah says, Sabirin, as I mentioned the story of Ismail and Ibrahim, you find that when Ibrahim says, I saw in my dream that I need to sacrifice you. Inni ara fil manam. I saw in my dream that I need to sacrifice you. He says, If'al ma tu'mar. This young child says to the father, do it, father, do it. Satajiduni inshallah min as-sabirin. God will find me perchance among the patient ones. This is the grandfather of Imam Hussain talking. This Ismail who was taken up on that hill, which All Muslims, if you go to Hajj, you have to reenact this. It's so powerful. Ismail says, perchance God will find me among the patient ones. And the fruits of his sacrifice shows up in Karbala. That among the ultimate patient ones, Sabirin, among the Sabirin was Imam Hussain A.S. and his companion. Patient, careful, calculated. You and I need to have that patience, brothers. Let us diffuse anger. Some of us have anger. We have animosity. We are fault finders, experts. Allah said, لا تلمزوا أنفسكم ولا تنابزوا بالألقاب بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان. Don't find faults in each other and don't give each other bad names when faith has come to you. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَتُبْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. And if you do not desist, you are an oppressor. Allah said in the Quran, stop finding faults in people. Cover them. Look at the bright side. When you meet people, say, I'm so honored to see you. I'm so happy to see you. What a blessing God has made you as my brother or sister. This is how you and I should be talking to each other, regardless of what faith anyone belongs to. This is the deen of Ahlul Bayt, that when I cry, I see that ultimate human being that I would give my life to be just next to. He's being sacrificed, and Allah says, do you like him? I said, oh Allah, I love him. He says, then you be willing to sacrifice. Give yourself. And don't lie, and don't cheat, and don't be arrogant, and don't find faults in people. And be kind, and be forgiving, and be loving, and be caring. As Allah says, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. They swallow the anger. You and I, brothers, as I say, we must swallow our anger. We must stop finding faults in people. There's too much chatter online in character assassinations and destructions of each other. It's satanic in most cases. Let's be very careful. The Umayyads were masters of this. They continue to do that until today. But if you and I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we said, no. I'm going to find 40 reasons, as the Prophet has said. Find 40 reasons to find excuses before you accuse somebody. 40 reasons. This is the akhlaq of Karbala. But Allah says, how is this patience practice? Long-term vision. And know that this bleep on this earth is just a bleep on the radar. And if you do not corner yourself carefully, you will lose out. Many of us have lost faith, not us. People on earth lose faith in Allah because they pray and their prayers don't get accepted. Or they think there's too much evil in the world. The evil that's prevailing in the world today is because the human race has been silent about it. Look what's happening in Myanmar when the Rohingyas are being exterminated. The rest of the world is silent. You go and see millions of refugees from Syria. The world is generally silent watching. In Africa, in the Congos, you go to Rwanda, how many people have died? The world is silent. Allah says, your silence has caused this. And if you love Hussain ibn Ali, you notice he wasn't silent. He rose. He even took his family forward as a voice of reason, as a voice of justice for humanity. If you claim to love him, then live by those standards. Otherwise, it's a disservice to the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Brothers, and even if we lose in this world whatever we have, Imam Hussain has given us an example. Doesn't matter. As long as you rise within the principles. Tonight in Karbala, we remember Ashura. As you know, Imam Hussain A.S. asks the enemy, give us respite for one night because we want to pray. Imagine, instead of just getting into a battle in a state of rage, Imam is calculated. You know, Imam told the 1,000 people who came with him, he said, go. This Yazid wants my head. He wants my bay'ah, not yours. Go. And he said, if you are ashamed, I will turn the light off. I will extinguish the lamp, so we won't see you. Go. And people left. Some people did leave. But Imam chose a select number of fighters. A select number, because Imam was careful to make sure that every move they make 1400 years later on these pulpits and anywhere who's reading history will say this man was impeccable on this pedestal of justice and this pedestal of truth. Impeccable. This is why you and I should be so honored that even in universities when we talk, we should tell the world, our leader, find an example like this one who gave his whole family for justice and truth for humanity. So the situation had become very dire, and the Imam now was doing dhikr at night. And historians say that I could just see, if a doctor says to you, your loved one is going to die this week, he's going to die this month. If you know that your loved one is in the hospital bed, you see them differently than you saw them before they were told they're going to die. If you ever see a loved one in your family or a friend where you know this person has a terminal disease and they're going to die, you will see them with a lot of grace and a lot of forgiveness. Imam, can you imagine how he must have looked at his companion and his family and the women? But I can't imagine how the Imam must have felt when he looked at the women. He says, I am a man, I am a protector. I won't be here, I'll be gone, and these women will be dragged in this desert, and they will be chained and put on saddle-less camels. Imam Hussain A.S. on the day of Ashura, they say, that of course they did dhikr all night, as you know. And then at Fajr time, Ibn Sa'd, arrogant, to show off, comes by the army of Imam Hussain and pulls an arrow. He says, oh, you world witness, I, Umar ibn Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, is the first one to pull this arrow towards Hussain to try to impress Ibn Ziyad and Yazid. Imam says, oh, Umar ibn Sa'd, you won't even eat the wheat from the city that they promised you governorship. You won't even eat the bread from that city. They have falsely promised you. You won't get it. Imam even says to Ibn Ziyad, he's building a white palace in Basra. Imam replies him, he says, not one night you will sleep in that palace. It's so true. Ibn Ziyad never slept in that palace, and he escaped to Syria, to Sham. Imam's promise was so true. He said, you foolish people, you are giving up your hereafter for the high stations, for this foolish moment. This is the lesson you and I need to have on our worldly pursuits, materials, our gains for popularity and power and governorship and leadership. Don't take it at the cost of vice. Don't do it with haram, only do it with halal. If you get it, only in halal, otherwise don't do it. So Imam Hussain A.S, the night goes by, Ibn Sa'd starts the war, the three flanks go forward. One was Abbas on the front lines, one was Zuhair ibn Qayn, one was Habib ibn Madahir, and they go forward to fight, and they fought for hours and hours and hours. And they were coming back and forth, and I want us to know, brother, that this entire army had not had a drop of water for days. Sacrifice of the highest caliber in 3 dimensions, brothers and sisters. 3-dimension sacrifice. Now Imam Hussain looks around and sees, Aina Abbas? Abbas is gone. I know when Abbas became martyred, Imam says they broke my back. This Alamdar's my back has been broken when he fell. Imam said he's gone. He says, Aina Ali Akbar? He says the body of Ali Akbar. I can just imagine that moment. Imam was with dust on his beard, he's walking around. Aina Habib? Aina Muslim? Where are you all? They've all left for the next one. Rabab, as you know, had his 6-month-old baby, Abdullah, known as Ali al-Asghar. You know, as a father, when your child cries, anyone who's a father or a mother, you know, when your baby cries, you can't stand it, you can't sleep. Baby is crying. Care for it, please. It's hungry. They say this little boy couldn't cry loud because he had no energy. He cried too much. They say his tongue would come out dry. 6-month-old baby, born on the 10th of Rajab in 60 after Hijrah. 6-month-old baby is in Karbala. While this baby is crying, Imam says, as a father, I can't go forward until I do my duty. Abbas went to get water, I need to do my duty. As a father, who wants to go forward and leave this child alone? So he approaches the mother and says, give me this baby. Imam says that army is hard-hearted. They have no compassion. They are wicked. They are evil. They are reckless. They are misinformed. They are jahil. He said, but maybe in the jahiliyyah, if I took this infant child, maybe I'll invoke some compassion in them. I swear, brothers and sisters, children, soldiers can go forward, we're sad, but when a baby is brought in front of an army, Allahu Akbar, it's the most incredible presentation in the annals of history. You find Imam Hussain, can you imagine when Rabab gives this baby, the mother knows that this child may not come back. Which mother can let go of the baby's head as it's going away and you're looking at this baby being taken? Imam goes forward. And the army is standing there ever so eager to kill Imam Hussain because he's the only one left now. He says, but let me try one more. So he goes forward and he stands. He says, oh people, you don't like me? Okay. You have a grudge against my father and me? Okay. Okay, I understand. But this child is innocent. What wrong has he done? He said, what wrong is this child? Tell me, what's wrong? The soldiers are listening, and you could see some of them are starting to feel, like, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Ibn Sa'd is standing there. He says, if these soldiers begin to feel compassion, this entire army will fall apart. He looks at Harmala, who was the archer. He says, silence this man. Silence him. That while the Imam is talking and giving them advice, an arrow strikes the neck of his Imam and it hits the arm of the Imam. He goes through the neck into his arm, and the Imam takes the sword, looks at it, and the blood is dripping. He says, Ridam bi qada. Ridam bi qada, Ya Allah, Ridam bi qada, inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Indeed, we are from Allah, we return to Him. Oh Allah, we are satisfied with this decree. Now, brothers and sisters, this baby, they say it trembled, and the Imam held it, and as the blood is dripping, he looks up into the sky, he says, Rabbana taqabbal hadha, my Lord, accept this. But the mother is on the other side of the tent watching. The mother and the sister is standing there watching a little brother being killed. They say the pain that Sakina went through was unbearable. As this little girl watching a little brother who is now being killed, she's watching this. And the Imam goes towards the tent. He says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Then he comes back, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi. Then he goes back, Inna lillah. He says, how do I bring this child back to the mother? How do I bring this child back to this mother? And Rabab is looking at this, and she's a Rabab. Imam takes his sword out and he digs a hole by the tent. He digs a hole by the tent and he takes this little child and buries it in a shallow grave. ألا لعنة الله إلى القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. مات حسين.